Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonker. Let's continue our discussion of NCERT Science series. You already know on StudyIQ we are running a science discussion where we are discussing NCERT texts connected to science, and we have already reached class 8. The agenda here is to discuss chapter by chapter, and in our previous interactions we have already completed discussions from chapter 1 to chapter 8. In the last class we spoke about cell, its structure and its functions, the basic idea we got. And there I also told you that in our subsequent interactions, that is in NCERT 9, 10th, 11th and 12th, we'll talk and we'll gain more information about cell, its structures and functions. The agenda for today's discussion is reproduction in animals. So what will we understand here? We'll understand what is the meaning of reproduction. What are the types of reproduction processes? We'll talk about sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In fact, when we discussed about microorganisms, I spoke in brief about asexual reproduction. Today we'll talk about that at the end of the discussion. But predominantly we'll focus on sexual reproduction more and more in this interaction. So without any delay, let us begin our discussion. But before all that, if you're preparing for UPSC Civil Services examination, you have just a couple of days to enroll, especially for our morning batch. You know, morning batch 6 is starting from 20th May. The classes will start from 8 a.m. If you are a working professional, you can also opt for the evening batch. It starts at 6 p.m. 25th May. Now, the question is, why do you have to opt for these programs? Because StudyIQ has designed comprehensive programs for UPSC Civil Services Preparation 2024. We will be hand-holding you from prelims till your interview. In fact, if you clear your preliminary examination 2024, the entire expenses of your mains residential program would be taken care of by StudyIQ. This comprehensive program, where you will get one-to-one mentorship, group mentorship, current affairs program, success and prelims program, everything, the whole shebang, it is priced at 29,999. If you want heaviest discounts, do use my code Rahul Live on the website or on the app as well. So do it as soon as possible because you have just a few days to enroll for this. I'll see you in the class. Right, let's begin our discussion. As I told you, today's discussion is about reproduction in animals. First things first, what is the meaning of reproduction? Reproduction is a biological process wherein new individuals, which are called offsprings, they are produced from parent or parents. Please remember, I'm writing here parent or parents. Parent, it's about asexual reproduction. Parents, sexual reproduction. In fact, reproduction is a fundamental feature of all the known life. Because of reproduction, the population increases, the population continues. And if we have to maintain a biosphere, Mother Earth serves as biosphere. For that, we need reproduction, right? Male and female, then create offspring. That is the meaning of reproduction. Now, the next question. So, what are the types of this? What are the types of reproduction? We have two kinds. One is asexual reproduction. A little bit of this idea we have already gotten when we spoke about microorganisms. Sexual reproduction. The prime objective of today's discussion is to understand this more clearly. Although we'll talk about asexual as well at the end of the discussion. So there are two kinds: sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction. What is the difference between these two? I want to understand the difference in a very plain and simple language. The difference between these two is the gametes. So what are these gametes? Gametes are sex cells. So in asexual reproduction, there are no gametes. That means in asexual, no involvement of gametes. But whenever I define sexual reproduction, please remember, sexual reproduction, it must have involvement of gametes from two counterparts, the male and the female. So sexual reproduction is the fusion of these gametes, and gametes are produced by the reproductive parts or reproductive organs. From male, sperms are produced. From females, ovum or ova is produced, and these two, they meet, these two gametes, they fuse to form a zygote, and this zygote ultimately develops into an offspring or an individual. Now this is called sexual reproduction. Please remember, the prime difference is this: if there are no gametes involved, It becomes asexual reproduction. So let's talk about sexual reproduction in more detailed way. Now, for sexual reproduction, as I told you, we need two people or two set of chromosomes are required. One comes from the male side, one comes from the female side. Now, in humans, the gametes are produced by male reproductive parts or male reproductive organs. Now, the male reproductive organs, they comprise basically of three things. That is a pair of testicles. Then from these testicles, sperms have to travel to the sperm duct and ultimately they would be released through the penis. These are the basic parts. The testicles or the testes, a pair of testes are there which are covered with the scrotum. Basically, they produce sperms. These sperms travel through the ducts and which are released or ejaculated through penis. Millions of sperms are produced as gametes by males. And a sperm basically comprises of few basic parts. A sperm looks something like this. It has been shown in the figure 9.2. A sperm has its head. Now this head is the prime area or the prime cell where you have the nuclear information. Where the nuclear information is there. Now this nuclear information has to reach to the ovum. And please remember, if we talk about a sperm, although there are millions of sperms which are released in a single ejaculation, but sperm is a single cell which has some nuclear information. But please remember, it is always a haploid cell. It is always a haploid cell. Haploid cell means where there is half set of chromosomes present in it. We all know if an individual, an offspring is to be produced, there are two sets of chromosomes which are needed. Half chromosomes come from the male part, that is the father. Half chromosomes come from the female, that is the mother. And every individual, every human being has 46 chromosomes. We have 46 chromosomes in us. And out of these 46 chromosomes, 23 come from the male part and 23 come from the female part. And these 23 chromosomes are present in the sperm head, that is the nuclear information. There is also middle part. This is basically the mitochondria which provides it the energy to move. And the sperm also has a tail. Why do sperms have tail? Because the sperms have to swim. The sperms have to swim through the fluidic medium to ultimately reach the ovum so that fertilization takes place. And the energy for this is provided by mitochondria. And in our interactions or in our class discussion also, we have spoken about why the mitochondrial DNA disease, they only come from the mother side, because this middle part which contains mitochondria, which provides the energy for the sperm to move, as soon as the sperm reaches the ovum, this part is detached and only the head part enters into the ovum to fertilize. That is why only nuclear information is transferred into the ovum, not the mitochondrial information. That means the ovum which has been fertilized, it does not contain the mitochondria from the father's side. And that's why whenever we talk about mitochondrial DNA diseases, those are inherited from the mother's side. So this is about the male reproductive organs. Now, female reproductive organs, they also consist of a pair of ovaries. These are ovaries. Now, the job of these ovaries is to produce egg or ovum. Now, in our next interaction or in our next chapters, we'll talk about adolescence and puberty, where we'll understand about the menstrual cycle or menstruation. In females, in women, what happens is not millions of ovums are produced. Every menstrual cycle, one particular egg is released by either of the ovaries, and this egg or the ovum, it moves through the oviduct, which is also called fallopian tube. And through this fallopian tube, the egg moves. This egg has to meet with the sperm. So female reproductive parts or organs, they consist of ovaries which produce ovum. Ovum will move through the oviduct, and this oviduct has to be fertilized so that fertilized egg attaches to the uterus, which is basically the home for the baby for 9 months. And when we talk about ovum, that is also single cell. Now ovum looks something like this, which has nuclear information. But please remember, this nucleus also contains information which is half. That means there are only 23 chromosomes, not 23 pairs, only 23 chromosomes. That is why 23 chromosomes come from the sperm, 23 from the ovum, they both meet. So these are the reproductive organs. Now what exactly happens in the human reproductive system? This is a more advanced picture, and in fact we will talk about these in our subsequent lectures in class 9 and class 10 in a more detailed way, because the process here is that sperms have to be transferred from the male reproductive part into the female reproductive parts, and sperms have to travel. As you can see in this picture, the males, they provide the sperm, 23 chromosomes from here. The females, there is egg, 23 chromosomes here. Millions of sperms are produced, and one of these sperms, it is able to fertilize this ovum. That means the nucleus fuses, and when this nucleus fuses, this particular zygote has 46 chromosomes, and after 9 months of gestation, a baby is born. That's the process. All right, so let's talk about this a little more. As I told you, the first step in the reproductive process in human beings is the process of production of gametes. Now, as soon as gametes are produced, then the gametes have to fuse. For that, when the reproductive age or the sexual age is reached and the sexual activity occurs, that means sperms reaches to the female reproductive organ, then the sperm, it fuses with the egg. Once it fuses with the egg, this process is called fertilization. We say the ovum is fertilized. Now during fertilization, the nuclei of the sperm and the nuclei of the egg, they both fuse, leading to complete set of chromosomes, 46 chromosomes. Now this is called as zygote, and over a period, this zygote slowly and steadily transforms into embryo. Now the question is, in animals, this was the example of humans, but what kind of fertilization process occurs? Now this is an example of internal fertilization. Internal fertilization means the sperm fertilizing the ovum inside the female body. This is called as internal fertilization. But in many other animals, and especially in aquatic animals and many other animals, there is a process of external fertilization as well. We'll talk about this in some time. But in humans also, there is a possibility of external fertilization because of advancement in medical procedures, which has been mentioned here. Have you heard of something called as test tube babies? Of course, you must have. What is the meaning of test tube babies? Now, in the production of these test tube babies, please remember, the baby is not born in a test tube. Please try to understand this. It's a misconception. What happens is, first of all, we need egg, and to pick up the egg, we need to stimulate the ovary. It's a medical procedure. So certain hormones are injected into female body so that the ovaries produce eggs. So these eggs are then picked up. Now when these eggs are extracted, these eggs are mixed with sperm, and all this thing is happening outside the body. And once these two mix, then fertilization takes place. And when this fertilization occurs, after that, there is in vitro injection through a cannula of this fertilized egg directly into the uterus so that it attaches to the uterus. This is the process of in vitro fertilization. You must have heard about these in recent times because of the advancement in medical technology. We talk about test tube babies, we talk about in vitro fertilization. So this is the process of external fertilization and then ultimately transferring the embryo into female body. And the same gestation process goes on. This is external fertilization in human beings. But in many animals, like the aquatic animals, external fertilization takes place. Now, fertilization means the gametes have to meet. That means on one side there is egg, on one side there is sperm, and these two have to meet. In external fertilization, what happens? The female, for example, in fish and in frogs, we do see. Now, these are frog eggs. Female frogs, what they do is, in the water, they lay many eggs. They lay many eggs. And after that, after laying of these eggs, the males, it happens in fishes also, it happens in frogs also, in many aquatic animals, the male fish then spreads the sperms over these eggs. And these sperms, they swim through the water itself and then fertilize these eggs. And the young ones or these eggs are then fertilized. After hatching that, the fishes or the frogs are produced, the offspring is produced. Now it is normally found in aquatic animals such as fishes, starfishes, etc., frogs, all these things. You must have seen a lot of tadpoles also, right? Now the question is, sir, you told me that with respect to humans, what happens is every 28 days or every month approximately, one egg is released, one ovum is released. But when I look at these aquatic animals, what happens is there are so many eggs which are released by female fish or a female frog or a female starfish, and then these are fertilized by males. Why do frogs and fishes they lay eggs in hundreds? Because there is a lot of loss of these eggs. Since external fertilization is taking place, many of these eggs, they would be exposed to water movement, they would be exposed to wind, they would be exposed to rainfall. Add to it, there are many other organisms which feed on these eggs also, because for other organisms, for other animals, these eggs of frogs and eggs of fish, they are like food. That is why these aquatic animals, they lay many eggs, whereas in humans, one egg is released every menstrual cycle. That's the basic idea. So what have we established here? We have established that sexual reproduction is a process of fusion of gametes, sperm and ovum coming together. When sperm and ovum come together, it's called fertilization. Fertilization can be internal or external. In human beings, it's internal. In many aquatic animals, it is external. And whenever we talk about external fertilization, there a lot of eggs are produced. Why? Because there is a possibility of loss. Now, the next process is the development of embryo. Now, as soon as the egg and sperm, they meet, then a zygote is formed. A zygote is a single cell which has complete set of chromosomes, that are 46 chromosomes. But slowly and steadily, cell division starts and the zygote transforms into embryo. Now this embryo, it has to attach to the uterus. You can see here what happens is the ovary releases the egg, and when this egg is released, the sperm, if it enters, if the sperm is available, then the sperm fertilizes this, and once it fertilizes, zygote is formed. From zygote, slowly and steadily division will take place, and this has to attach itself to the uterus, to the uterine line, and wherever it is attached to the uterine line, placenta is formed. Then slowly and steadily the cell division takes place, and then ultimately gestation starts. After 9 months, the baby is developed, its organs are developed. That means life starts from two haploid cells, a sperm and an egg, which fuse together to form a zygote, which is a single cell with complete set of chromosomes. From a single cell, slowly and steadily, an offspring or a baby is born after 9 months of gestation period. Now we'll talk about what exactly happens if the egg is released and if the sperm is not available. What happens? We'll talk about that in our subsequent discussion when we talk about adolescence and puberty. But till here, we have established that the gametes fuse, a zygote is formed, zygote undergoes cell division, then an embryo is formed, an embryo attaches to uterus, it undergoes gestation period, and then a baby is formed. This is the entire reproductive process in animals, in humans and in animals. Now, there are different set of animals. Viviparous animals and oviparous animals. Sometimes questions can be set up on this. Viviparous animals, please remember, viviparous animals are those which give birth to young ones, like humans, like say like dogs, like cows, like horses, etc. They give birth to young ones. They are called viviparous animals. And there are a set of animals which give eggs, which lay eggs, and then those eggs hatch. Those are oviparous animals. So remember, oviparity and viviparity is a process. Oviparity is a process of laying eggs. So oviparous animals are ones which lay eggs. Viviparous animals are those which give birth to young ones directly. But there are certain animals or certain species which are somewhere in middle of this, which are called as ovoviviparous animals. Now what happens is, we saw under oviparity, a female lays the egg, male releases a sperm, and then it fertilizes, and slowly and steadily after hatching, the young ones are born. But here in viviparity, directly young ones are born after the requisite gestation period. But ovoviviparity, it is seen in some animals, some species, where the eggs are laid, but the eggs are inside the mother's body only. And this kind of thing is especially seen in many snakes, many reptiles, and many amphibians. So basically, in viviparous animals, there is internal fertilization. In ovoviviparous animals, there is internal fertilization. But in oviparous animals, there can be internal or there can be external fertilization as well. And please remember, ovoviviparity means the egg is fertilized inside the female body, not externally, but ultimately these lay eggs. Viviparous, they never lay eggs. They give birth to young ones. Very important information from exam perspective. Simple MCQ can be formed. Consider the following statements. First statement about oviparous animals. Second statement about viviparous animals. Right? Move on. From young ones to adults. Now we see that from a zygote, an embryo is formed. Embryo is attached to uterus. It goes through gestation period. Then a baby is born. A baby goes through a life cycle. And in many animals, in many insects, we do see this. Now we have seen in our previous discussion, we have seen sericulture. Under sericulture, we have seen a silkworm transforms into a larva transforms into a caterpillar, then to a pupa, then to an adult. Same case applies for frog as well. For frogs, you must have seen frog basically laying the eggs, a fertilized egg, then slowly and steadily transforming into a tadpole, a mature tadpole, then ultimately into a frog. Now, this process is called as metamorphosis. Please remember that from the development of young ones to adults, this process is called as metamorphosis. Transformation of young ones into adults is called metamorphosis. Now, we also go through the same process. That means we have different stages of our life, right? We are infant first, then a childhood, then you have adolescence or teenage, then you become adult, then you become old, then the life cycle ends, right? That's the basic metamorphosis of humans. So this is about the sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, I'm repeating again, asexual reproduction means where the gametes are not involved. There is no involvement of sex cells or gametes. And asexual reproduction is predominantly seen in many unicellular organisms, although not exclusive to unicellular. Please try to understand. Asexual reproduction is predominantly seen in unicellular organisms, but it can also be present in multicellular organisms as well. There are different methods or different means of asexual reproduction. Now, in the asexual reproduction, the offspring or the progeny that is produced, it is exact replica of the parent, and it comes from single parent. It comes from only one organism. That is why it is an exact replica. You can see here there is a process of budding, meaning in hydras we have seen hydra, it undergoes budding. You can see this is a mature hydra. It is slowly and steadily budding, and once this bud is matured, it will be cut off, and you can see another hydra which is quite similar to the parent. This is called as budding process. And in many unicellular organisms, especially in bacteria and amoeba and other unicellular organisms, we see binary fission. Binary fission means the division of a cell into two. That means a parent cell dividing into two daughter cells by binary fission. Now, when does this happen or when does this occur? This information is in their DNA. Whenever there are favorable conditions which are met or which are achieved, this undergoes binary fusion. One cell divides into two. Exact same copy of this two cells. Same to same genetic information, same to same phenotypic information also. Again, from a single parent, gene cloning has also been developed. Now, we'll talk about this in subsequent discussion whenever we talk about biotechnology. But in this NCERT, there is a simple information which has been provided for you, the story of Dolly the clone. Now, Dolly was world's first genetic cloning example where a sheep was created not from any sex cells. It was created from a somatic cell or a mammary cell of the parent. A single somatic cell was taken, and using that somatic cell, the somatic cell nuclear transfer was used, and ultimately clone of Dolly was created. Dolly was the first genetically cloned sheep. Now we'll talk about Dolly and we'll talk about biotechnology, genetic cloning in our subsequent discussion in a more extensive way. But this was just an information for you that it is quite possible to produce offspring or to produce exact replica through asexual reproduction in even in mammals also. Again, in humans, gene cloning is not allowed. In humans, exact replica of creating another human is not allowed, but for animals it is quite allowed. United Nations does not allow human cloning procedure, but it allows animal cloning. In many countries, animal cloning is quite legal. For instance, in USA, in Australia, in developed countries, animals are cloned. Why would they be cloned? Because I'd want same productivity. For example, let me explain you. If I have a cow which gives me about 100 liters of milk every day, I would want many of such cows. So I'd simply create a clone of the same cow so that it would be more productive, or I can produce more and more things, more and more milk, more cheese, right? More curd, etc. That's why gene cloning has been allowed in many developed countries. We'll talk about this in a subsequent interaction for sure. So that's the end of today's discussion where we understood reproduction in animals. Thank you for watching this, and you do know that if you like this video, you can always follow me on my social media handle at the rate Rahul Sai 222. If you have any query, any doubts, any complaint, feedback, suggestion, if you simply want to talk, just drop a text on IG. I do respond on Saturdays and Sundays. Thank you for watching this again. Jai Hind.